The Last of Us is one of the most iconic games on PlayStation, filled with a gripping story and action-packed gameplay, so it's not that surprising that it's now getting its own TV show on HBO. Unfortunately, not everything gets translated well into the transition from game to series, and The Last of Us is no different. Here's everything that's in The Last of Us trailer that isn't from the game. Let's get right into it. First up, Joel and Ellie meeting another couple. One of the major things we see in the trailer that none of us remember while playing the game is when Joel, played by Pedro Pascal, and Ellie, played by Bella Ramsey, meet an elderly couple along their journey. The words of their conversation play a big part in the trailer, starting off with Joel asking them which way was best to go west, to which the man replies that considering that he'd already seen the horrors along the way so far, the best way to go was back east, as there was only more danger if he kept on going further and further west. That's when Ellie comes in, retorting that the couple can't scare them, to which the woman chillingly replies that they've already scared Joel. This is a pretty interesting conversation to watch. Even though we just got bits and pieces of it, the truth is that not even a single word of this was in the game. There was no elderly couple that Joel and Ellie ran into, nor did they have this type of conversation with anyone in the game. It's possible that this was part of the unused concepts that Neil Druckmann shared that would be part of HBO's The Last of Us, as well as some cameos setting up future seasons. Next up, Joel and Ellie see the Northern Lights. In one part of The Last of Us trailer, we can see Joel sitting by the campfire while Ellie stands mesmerized, looking at the Northern Lights above her. As beautiful as this scene is, it wasn't in the original game, but one thing's for sure, it was definitely a part of the unused concepts we talked about before. After all, we've seen some of the artwork for the original game, which showed Joel and Ellie sitting by a campfire together and laughing, and yet it never made its way to the actual game. In the original game, we spent a lot of time watching Joel and Ellie get closer and closer to each other, but then the game skipped over a lot of elements after the two finally embraced each other as family, until the final section. So what we might get on The Last of Us show on HBO is much more time watching Joel and Ellie bond with each other. Here's hoping that this Northern Light scene will be at least just as, if not even more iconic than that giraffe scene at the end of the game. Coming up, Ashley Johnson's character. Another really big thing that's been confirmed to be a part of HBO's The Last of Us, but wasn't in the original PlayStation game at all, was the role of Ashley Johnson, who was the voice actor behind Ellie in the video game. Anyway, the trailer doesn't give us much information about Ashley's role, other than that one shot of her holding up a baby. So while we definitely know she's in the show, we're not entirely sure for what. Still, fans have already come up with theories, the most popular one out of all of them being that Johnson is actually playing Ellie's mother. This would actually make a lot of sense and be pretty cool. Not only is it a major nod to the likeness Johnson shares with Ellie's game design because of her motion capture performances, but we'll also learn much more about Ellie's backstory. After all, in the original game, her parents were only sometimes referenced or mentioned, but we never saw them or got many details about them. No matter who she ends up playing, bringing Ashley Johnson to the show is definitely something that's unique only to the show. Following up, Troy Baker's character. Troy Baker was the original voice actor for Joel in the game, so it's pretty cool that he's on HBO's The Last of Us too. Of course, it just isn't in the same way. In the trailer for the TV series, it looks like Baker is playing a character who's a part of David's crew. For those of you who don't know, or for those of you who need a little refreshing of their memory since it's been a while since the first game, David and his group run into Ellie when she's out looking for help for a severely injured Joel. Later on, we find out that David's group is definitely not who they seem to be when Ellie finds out that they're actually cannibals. They even try to kill her at one point to eat her later on. Anyway, out of that entire group, David is, of course, the most prominent character and the one that's fleshed out the most. But considering that this is Troy Baker, the guy that put up some pretty fantastic performances in both of the Last of Us games, and that he has a close relationship with Neil Druckmann, it's pretty likely that Baker's character will be given a bigger role on the HBO show. Now, for Bill's partner, Frank. Another character that we'll be seeing on the show is none other than Bill, played by Nick Offerman. Now, as far as we remember from the original game, Bill is a character that we meet early on, and is a survivor who lives in an abandoned town. He knew Joel long before the events of the game, through Joel's smuggling business, but he's gone a little crazy ever since the apocalypse started, and set up traps all over town to deter unwanted visitors. And yet, Joel and Ellie made it past every one of them to reach his safe house. Anyways, as we keep on getting to know Bill more and more, we also learn a little bit about his former partner, Frank, who apparently stole some supplies and then left Bill after getting tired of his elaborate methods of survival. Eventually, Frank is found to have hanged himself himself so that he wouldn't end up turning after getting bitten. That dead body is the most we ever saw of the character in the game, so it's definitely a new thing to see Frank alive and well on the HBO adaptation. And he's played by none other than Murray Bartlett. Of course, this means that we'll be learning much more about Bill's character in the series. Up next, the stalker infected type. In the world of The Last of Us, there's not just one type of infected, and so far in the marketing cycle, we've seen that the HBO show will definitely be showcasing clickers, runners, as well as bloaters. But the really interesting part is that we'll also be seeing another type too, and it's one that we were only introduced to when the second game came out: stalkers. Now, stalkers are exactly what they sound like. The easiest way to recognize them is by noticing that they always walk around on all fours, and they silently stalk their prey by sneaking up on them, hence the name, obviously. Anyway, in the trailer for The Last of Us TV show on HBO, we notice an infected running around on all fours, which is a huge hint that stalkers will definitely be included in the adaptation of the game, even if they weren't there in the first game. Moving on, The Last of Us trailer reveals new characters created for the show. Considering that most of us already know how Joel and Ellie's story will end, HBO's The Last of Us definitely needs to make sure to keep their viewers engaged and on their toes throughout, even those that have already played the original games a billion times. And while it's definitely hard to move from one medium to the other, The Last of Us is trying to stay as close to the original material as possible. The truth is that not everything can always be the same, and sometimes it's a good thing.
You see, I believe everything happens for a reason.
Anyway, the official full-length trailer for The Last of Us TV show recently dropped, and it's already making a lasting impression, not only because we have Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey playing the two main characters, but also because we see some new faces on the show too. Coming up, Ashley Johnson and Troy Baker's character. We already touched on this a while before, but two new characters that we'll be seeing on the TV show are played by none other than Ashley Johnson and Troy Baker, and considering their relationship with the original game, they'll be playing some pretty big roles in it too. We only got one shot of Johnson in the teaser, which shows her holding up a crying baby. A lot of people think that she might be Ellie's mother, who we didn't see in the game, but would definitely be really cool to see in the series. But some other sources say that she'll be playing a character named Anna, who's a pregnant woman, alone and on the run, and who must give birth under the most terrifying circumstances. As for Baker, he'll apparently be playing a member of David's group, and while we don't know much about him either, some sources shared that his character is called James, and he's a senior member of the group of settlers who must fight to keep their community alive in the face of increasingly brutal odds. Finally, the married couple. Other than Ashley Johnson and Troy Baker's characters, we're also introduced to an elderly couple in the TV show who we definitely never saw even once in the original game. Apparently, their names are Marlon and Florence, played by the actors Graham Greene and Elaine Miles. They're a married couple surviving alone in the wilderness of post-apocalyptic Wyoming. Their conversation with Joel and Ellie is a major highlight of the latest trailer, where they try to ward off the two from going west as it's dangerous. And that's a wrap for this video. Are you excited to watch HBO's The Last of Us show? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this.